The morning air was crisp and cool as 17-year-old Maya stepped out of her mother's car. She could hear the excited chatter of other students echoing through what she knew must be the grand entrance of Riverside Conservatory. Her white cane tapped gently against the pavement as she made her way toward the building, her mother's hand lightly guiding her elbow. "There are about 20 steps ahead," her mother whispered softly. "The main doors are wide open." Maya nodded, her heart already racing. This was it. The audition she'd been preparing for all year. The scholarship that could change everything. As they entered the building, Maya felt the sudden shift in temperature and acoustics. The space was massive. She could tell by the way sounds bounced off distant walls and high ceilings. Her cane echoed against marble floors, and she was acutely aware of how that sound seemed to draw attention. Conversations around her dropped to hushed whispers. "Is that her?" Someone murmured nearby. "I didn't know they were letting blind students audition," another voice said, not quite quiet enough. Maya's mother squeezed her arm gently, a silent gesture of support. They'd both expected this. It happened everywhere Maya went. The stares, the whispers, the assumptions. She'd learned to block most of it out, but today felt different. Today she wasn't just attending a school or walking through a mall. Today, she was competing against some of the best young pianists in the state. "The waiting area is to your left," a staff member said, approaching them. His voice was kind. "Would you like me to show you to a seat?" "That would be wonderful, thank you," Maya's mother replied. As they walked through the crowded hallway, Maya counted her steps, mentally mapping the space. This was how she navigated the world now. Everything was a mental picture built from sounds, touches, and careful observation. She heard at least 30 other students in the waiting area, maybe more. Some were warming up their fingers on their laps. Others were humming their pieces under their breath. The nervous energy was thick enough to touch. The staff member led them to a row of chairs, and Maya carefully lowered herself into one, placing her bag beside her. Her mother sat down next to her, and for a moment they just sat there in silence while the world buzzed around them. "You're going to be amazing," her mother whispered, leaning close. "Just like you always are." Maya smiled, but before she could respond, a voice cut through the noise. It was sharp, polished, and dripping with confidence. "I still can't believe they're letting just anyone audition these days." The voice belonged to a young woman, probably in her early 20s. Maya could hear expensive heels clicking against the floor as she walked past, followed by at least 3 or 4 other people, an entourage. "I mean, standards used to mean something," the voice continued, louder now as if wanting to be heard. "This is Riverside Conservatory, not a community college music program." Maya felt her mother tense beside her. She reached over and gently touched her mother's hand, a silent message to stay calm. She'd heard worse before. "That's Victoria Laurent," a girl sitting nearby whispered to her friend. "She played at Carnegie Hall last year. Her whole family is famous in the classical music world." "Really?" the friend whispered back. "She seems kind of intense." "Yeah, but she's incredible. I heard she's already being courted by major orchestras." Maya tried to focus on her breathing, on the piece she'd spent months perfecting, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was ambitious, she knew that. Her teacher had warned her it might be too advanced, too risky for a scholarship audition. But Maya had insisted. She needed to prove something, not just to the judges, but to herself. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice her bag had shifted slightly into the walkway until she heard a sharp gasp. "Excuse me," it was that voice again. "Victoria." Maya's cane had apparently tapped against something, probably a bag or a purse, as she adjusted her position. "Do you mind?" Victoria said, her voice rising above the chatter. "That's a $1,500 bag you just knocked over." The entire waiting area seemed to go silent. Maya felt heat rush to her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, reaching down to try to help, but her hands found only air. It's fine," Victoria said, but her tone suggested it was anything but fine. "I just think if someone can't navigate a simple waiting room without causing chaos, maybe they should reconsider whether they belong at a conservatory audition." Maya heard someone gasp. Her mother started to stand, but Maya caught her arm. "It was an accident," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the trembling she felt inside. "I apologize." "Right, well, accidents happen," Victoria said with false sweetness. "I just hope your playing is more careful than your walking." Laughter erupted from Victoria's group, though it sounded forced and uncomfortable. Maya could sense others in the room shifting awkwardly. Some probably agreed with Victoria. Others were likely too shocked or too afraid to say anything. "Come on, Vic," one of Victoria's friends said. "Let's go check the audition schedule." Their footsteps retreated, the clicking of expensive heels fading into the distance. But the damage was done. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her now, and the whisper started up again, even louder than before. "That was harsh," someone muttered. "I know, but, can she really compete at this level?" Another voice responded. Her mother leaned close. "We can leave right now if you want." "You don't have to put up with this." Maya shook her head firmly. "No, I'm not leaving." "Are you sure, honey?" I'm sure, and she was. Because this wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her, and it wouldn't be the last. When Maya was 12, a drunk driver had run a red light and changed her life forever. She'd spent months in the hospital, endured countless surgeries, and woke up one day to complete darkness. The doctors had been gentle but clear. Her sight was gone, and it wasn't coming back. Everyone had expected her to give up piano. How could a blind girl possibly play at the level she'd been playing before? How could she read new music, learn complicated pieces, compete with other students who could see the keys? But Maya had refused to quit. She'd spent 3 years relearning everything, developing a muscle memory so precise that her fingers knew exactly where to go without guidance. She'd learned to hear music differently, to feel it in ways that sighted players sometimes missed. She'd come too far to let someone like Victoria Laurent scare her away now. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, running her fingers over the braille display. She opened her audio notes and listened to the recording she'd made of herself playing her audition piece. Even through the tiny speakers, she could hear every nuance, every emotion she'd poured into those keys. Around her, other students continued to whisper and practice. Somewhere down the hall, a piano played scales. The audition was starting soon, and Maya could feel the nervous energy building in her chest. But beneath the nerves was something else. Something stronger. Determination. Victoria Laurent had no idea what was coming. The lunch break came as a relief to most students, but Maya felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Her mother had left an hour earlier, needing to get back to work. And now Maya sat alone in the conservatory's cafe with a sandwich she could barely taste. She'd found a small table in the corner, using her cane to navigate carefully between chairs and people. The cafe was crowded and noisy, full of nervous energy and excited chatter about the morning auditions. Maya tried to focus on eating, on staying calm, on mentally reviewing her piece one more time. That's when she heard those heels again. Click, click, click. Victoria's footsteps were distinctive now. Maya had learned to recognize them, the way a deer learns to recognize the sound of a predator in the forest. "Oh, look, there she is," Victoria's voice rang out, loud enough to carry across several tables. "All by herself. How independent." Maya's hand froze halfway to her mouth, her sandwich suddenly feeling like cardboard. "Should we go say hi?" One of Victoria's friends asked, giggling. "Why not? I think we should be supportive of all our fellow competitors, don't you?" Maya heard them settle at a table nearby. Not right next to her, but close enough. Definitely close enough. Her heart began to race, and she carefully set down her sandwich, her appetite completely gone. "So, Victoria," one of the friends said, speaking unnecessarily loud, "what piece are you performing today?" "La Campanella by Liszt," Victoria announced proudly. "You know, one of the most technically difficult pieces in the entire piano repertoire. It requires perfect precision, incredible hand-eye coordination, and years of advanced training." There was a pause, heavy and deliberate. "Of course, not everyone chooses pieces that actually challenge them," Victoria continued. "Some people pick pieces that are more, let's say, manageable for their situation." Laughter erupted from her table. Maya felt her face grow hot. "What piece did you say that girl over there was doing?" Another voice chimed in. "Oh, apparently she's attempting Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, Victoria said with exaggerated surprise. "Can you imagine? One of the most ambitious pieces a pianist can tackle. It requires reading incredibly complex passages, coordinating both hands through intricate harmonies, and maintaining perfect timing throughout." "But how can she?" someone started to ask. "Exactly," Victoria interrupted. "How can she? I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being realistic. How does someone who can't even see the keys know if they're playing the right notes? It's like asking someone to paint a masterpiece in the dark. More laughter. Maya's hands clenched into fists under the table. Maybe she learned it from one of those YouTube tutorials. One of Victoria's friends suggested, and they all burst into giggles again. Oh, I'm sure the judges will be very understanding, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. They'll probably give her a participation trophy or something. You know how these things work now. Everything has to be inclusive, even if it means lowering standards. Maya bit her lip hard, fighting back the burning sensation behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. She refused to give them that satisfaction. I heard she used to be able to see, another voice said, before some accident. Oh, that's so sad, Victoria said, though her tone suggested she felt anything but sad. It really is tragic. But just because something is tragic doesn't mean we should pretend reality isn't reality. This is Riverside Conservatory, not a charity concert. The scholarship should go to someone who can actually handle the demands of a professional music career. A chair scraped nearby, and a new voice entered the conversation. It was male, deep and clearly uncomfortable. That's pretty harsh, Victoria, the young man said. Maya's heart jumped. Someone was finally speaking up. Excuse me? Victoria's tone turned icy. I said that's harsh, the young man repeated. You're talking about another student like she's not even here. That's not cool. Oh, here we go, Victoria sighed dramatically. Let me guess, you're going to lecture me about being nice? About how we should all hold hands and sing Kumbaya? I'm just saying maybe you could show a little respect, the young man said. We're all here for the same reason. We all worked hard to get this audition. Some of us worked harder than others, Victoria shot back. Tell me, where are you from? Let me guess. Some tiny town where you were the big fish in a small pond? Played at your local church and everyone told you how talented you were? There was a painful silence. That's what I thought, Victoria continued, her voice cruel now. You people come to places like this and think your small-town success means anything in the real world. Newsflash, it doesn't. My family has been in professional music for 3 generations. I've studied under masters you've probably never even heard of. So maybe don't lecture me about respect when you barely belong here yourself. Maya heard the young man's chair scrape back, followed by retreating footsteps. Her defender had been humiliated into silence, just like everyone else. Anyone else want to white knight for the blind girl? Victoria asked the cafe at large. No? Good, I thought not. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, could sense the mixture of pity and relief from other students. Relief that they weren't the target. Relief that someone else was absorbing Victoria's cruelty instead of them. Anyway, Victoria said, her voice returning to its artificially cheerful tone. I should probably go warm up. Can't risk any mistakes during my performance. Unlike some people, I'll actually know if I hit a wrong note. Her entourage laughed again, and Maya heard them gathering their things. As they walked past her table, Victoria paused. Maya could feel her presence, could smell her expensive perfume. Good luck out there, Victoria said sweetly. You're going to need it. Playing piano is hard enough when you can see what you're doing. I can't even imagine trying to fake your way through it. Then she was gone, her heels clicking away toward the practice rooms, her friends trailing behind her like loyal subjects following a queen. Maya sat frozen for a long moment. Around her, conversation slowly resumed, but they were quieter now, more subdued. She could feel people glancing at her, probably wondering if she was going to cry or break down or run away. She did none of those things. Instead, Maya carefully packed up her uneaten lunch, feeling for each item and placing it neatly in her bag. Her hands were steady now, the initial shock and hurt crystallizing into something else entirely. Determination. Pure, fierce determination. She stood up, unfolded her cane, and began making her way toward the exit. As she walked, she could hear snippets of conversation. That was brutal. I can't believe Victoria said those things. Do you think that girl will even go through with the audition now? Maya kept walking, her head held high, her cane tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. She knew exactly where she was going. The practice rooms. She had 2 hours before her audition slot, and she was going to use every single minute, because Victoria Laurent had just made a critical mistake. She'd assumed that words could break Maya, that humiliation could defeat her, that cruelty could make her quit. But Maya had survived far worse than cruel words. She'd survived an accident that stole her sight. She'd survived months of painful recovery. She'd survived the devastating thought that she might never play piano again, and she'd come out stronger. As she entered the quiet hallway leading to the practice rooms, Maya allowed herself a small smile. Victoria had no idea what she'd just unleashed. She'd spent her whole life coasting on family reputation and natural talent, surrounded by people too intimidated to challenge her. But Maya had spent the last 5 years fighting for every single note, earning every moment of progress through sheer willpower and countless hours of practice. The stage was set. The battle lines were drawn, and Maya was ready to show everyone exactly what a blind girl could do. The afternoon auditions began promptly at 2 o'clock. Maya sat in the wings, listening to the other performers through the heavy velvet curtain that separated her from the stage. Each pianist brought something different. Some were technically proficient but nervous. Others played with confidence but lacked emotional depth. A few were genuinely talented, and Maya found herself nodding along to their performances, appreciating their skill even as her own nerves continued to build. Then came the announcement everyone had been waiting for. Next, we have Victoria Laurent, performing La Campanella by Franz Liszt. The applause that greeted Victoria's name was immediate and enthusiastic. Maya could hear it even from backstage, could feel the energy shift in the auditorium. This wasn't just another student. This was somebody people had come specifically to hear. Maya listened as Victoria's heels clicked across the stage. There was a pause, probably Victoria adjusting the piano bench, getting comfortable. Then silence. The kind of silence that happens when hundreds of people collectively hold their breath. And then Victoria began to play. From the very first notes, Maya understood why Victoria had the reputation she did. The piece was incredibly difficult, filled with rapid jumps across the keyboard, intricate passages that required both hands to move independently at lightning speed, and delicate sections that demanded absolute precision. One wrong note, one mistimed jump, and the entire piece would fall apart. Victoria hit every single note perfectly. Maya sat perfectly still, listening intently. Her trained ear caught every nuance, every technical flourish. The runs were clean and crisp. The jumps were executed with millimeter precision. The trills were perfectly even. It was like listening to a perfectly programmed computer, hitting every mark exactly as written on the sheet music. The piece built to its famous climax, the section that gave it its nickname, the Little Bell, with high notes ringing out like a church bell tower. Victoria handled it flawlessly, her fingers flying across the upper register with absolute confidence. When she finished, the auditorium exploded. The applause was thunderous, lasting for what felt like forever. Maya could hear people standing up, could hear the genuine appreciation in their response. Mixed with the applause were excited whispers and murmurs of approval. Incredible. Absolutely flawless. Did you see that technique? Perfect execution. Victoria's footsteps clicked across the stage as she stood to bow. Maya could picture her perfectly, probably wearing that same confident smile, basking in the adoration. The applause continued as Victoria exited stage left, walking right past where Maya sat waiting. "Try following that," Victoria whispered as she passed, her voice low enough that only Maya could hear. "Seriously, good luck. You're going to need a miracle." Then she was gone, swept away by her entourage and well-wishers who'd been waiting in the wings. Maya took a deep breath, trying to center herself. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she pressed them together in her lap. The applause was finally dying down, but she could still hear the excited energy in the audience, people buzzing about what they'd just witnessed. A hand touched her shoulder gently. It was the stage manager. "You're up next," he said kindly. "Are you ready?" Was she ready? Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Victoria's performance had been technically perfect. Absolutely, undeniably perfect. How could she possibly follow that? "Yes," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm ready." The stage manager helped guide her to the wing's entrance. The piano is about 15 steps straight ahead. The bench is already adjusted. "Take your time." Maya nodded, gripping her cane. She heard the announcer's voice boom across the auditorium. "Our next performer is Maya Chen, playing Piano Sonata No. 14 in C-sharp minor, also known as the Moonlight Sonata by Ludwig van Beethoven, third movement." The applause that greeted her name was polite, but noticeably more subdued than Victoria's reception. Maya stepped onto the stage, and immediately the whispers began. She could hear them even from 15 steps away. "That's her, the blind girl." Can she really do this? This should be interesting. Maya counted her steps carefully. 1, 2, 3. The stage felt enormous, like she was crossing an ocean. She could sense the vastness of the space, the high ceiling, the hundreds of people watching her every move. Somewhere in the front row, she knew Victoria was sitting, probably wearing that smug smile, already convinced of her victory. 10, 11, 12. Maya's cane touched the piano bench. She'd made it. Carefully, she folded her cane and set it on the floor beside the bench. She sat down slowly, adjusting her position, her hands hovering over the keys. This was the moment she always loved and dreaded in equal measure. That split second before beginning, when anything was possible, when the piece existed in perfect potential before a single note was played. She placed her hands on the keys, finding middle C through years of muscle memory, her right hand on C, her left hand finding its starting position. She took one more breath, feeling the cool smoothness of the keys beneath her fingertips. The auditorium was silent. Now, waiting, watching, probably doubting, Maya began to play. The third movement of Moonlight Sonata is often called one of the most challenging pieces in Beethoven's repertoire. It starts with a burst of rapid arpeggios, the right hand cascading up and down the keyboard in a frenzy of notes, while the left hand provides a driving, relentless rhythm. It's chaotic and beautiful, like a storm captured in music. From the very first measure, Maya poured everything into it. Every ounce of frustration from Victoria's cruelty, every moment of doubt she'd ever felt, every person who'd ever told her she couldn't do something because of her disability. It all went into those keys, but it wasn't just anger. It was also joy. The pure, unbridled joy of doing the thing she loved most in the world. The joy of proving herself. The joy of music itself. Her fingers flew across the keys with practiced precision, but unlike Victoria's mechanical perfection, there was something else in Maya's playing. Something human. Something raw and real and utterly authentic. She couldn't see the keys, so she'd learned to feel them in a way that sighted pianists sometimes forgot to do. Each note wasn't just a technical exercise. Each note was a conversation, an emotion, a piece of her soul translated into sound. The piece moved through its various sections. The stormy opening gave way to a slightly calmer middle section, though still technically demanding. Maya's hands crossed over each other seamlessly, finding their positions without hesitation. She'd played this piece so many times that it was written into her very bones. Then came the return to the main theme, building in intensity. This was the section that separated good pianists from great ones. It required both power and delicacy, the ability to play with passion without losing control. Maya leaned into it, her whole body moving with the music. In her mind, she wasn't in an auditorium full of strangers. She was alone in her practice room, playing for the sheer love of it the way she had thousands of times before. The music built and built, climbing toward its explosive finale. Her fingers hammered out the final cascading runs, left hand and right hand working in perfect synchronization. Decades of training and 5 years of adaptive technique coming together in this one moment. She struck the final chord with both hands, letting it ring out into the silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched on and Maya felt a flutter of panic. Had she made a mistake? Had she misread the audience completely? Then the applause began. But this wasn't the polite applause she'd received when her name was announced. This wasn't even the enthusiastic response Victoria had gotten. This was something else entirely. The sound started like a wave and grew into a tsunami. People weren't just clapping. They were cheering. Maya could hear chairs scraping as people stood up. The applause went on, punctuated by shouts of appreciation and what sounded like genuine emotion in people's voices. Maya stood slowly, her legs shaky, her heart racing. She bowed in the direction of where she knew the judges sat, then toward the audience. The applause somehow grew even louder. As she made her way off the stage, retrieved her cane, and walked back toward the wings, Maya could still hear the response. It followed her off the stage, warming her from the inside out. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. And somewhere in that audience, Victoria Laurent was finally silent. The wait was torture. Maya sat in a small room backstage with the other finalists, her hands folded in her lap, her heart still racing from the performance. She could hear the muffled sounds of the judges deliberating in the adjacent room, their voices rising and falling but never quite clear enough to make out actual words. Around her, the other finalists sat in various states of nervous tension. Some tapped their feet, others hummed quietly to themselves. A few whispered to each other about their performances, analyzing every note, every phrase, wondering if they'd done enough. Victoria sat across the room, surrounded by her usual group of friends, but something had changed. The confident energy that had surrounded her all day seemed diminished somehow. She wasn't talking much, wasn't making snide comments or cruel jokes. She just sat there, her designer purse clutched in her lap, staring at the wall. Maya had noticed the shift the moment she'd returned backstage after her performance. Victoria had been standing in the wings with her entourage, and when Maya walked past, there had been no whispered insult, no mocking comment. Just silence, heavy, uncomfortable silence. The minutes dragged by. 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 40. The longer the judges deliberated, the more anxious everyone became. "What's taking so long?" one of Victoria's friends whispered. Vic's performance was clearly the best. "Technically speaking." "Maybe they're just being thorough," another replied, but she didn't sound convinced. Maya tried to focus on her breathing, on staying calm. Whatever happened next, she'd already accomplished something important. She'd stood on that stage and played her heart out, despite everything Victoria had said, despite all the doubt and cruelty. That was worth something, regardless of what the judges decided. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door opened. A woman in her 50s stepped into the room, her face serious and unreadable. "They're ready," she said simply. "Everyone, please follow me back to the auditorium." The finalists stood as one, gathering their belongings and filing out of the room. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she unfolded her cane and joined the line. Someone gently touched her elbow. "Need help?" It was the young man from the cafe, the one who'd tried to defend her against Victoria's cruelty. "Thank you," Maya said softly, grateful for the kindness. They walked together through the hallway, back toward the main auditorium. Maya could hear the buzz of conversation ahead, the audience waiting to hear the results. Her mouth felt dry and she wished she'd brought water. As they entered the auditorium, the audience's chatter died down. The finalists were directed to seats in the front row, a spotlight illuminating them from above. Maya felt exposed sitting there, knowing hundreds of eyes were watching, waiting. The head judge walked onto the stage. His footsteps were slow and measured, and when he reached the microphone, he paused for a long moment before speaking. "Thank you all for your patience," he began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "I want to start by saying that every performer we heard today demonstrated remarkable skill and dedication. The decision we've made was not an easy one." Maya's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "At Riverside Conservatory," the judge continued, "we pride ourselves on recognizing not just technical proficiency, but artistic truth. Anyone can learn to hit the right notes. Any talented student can memorize a difficult piece and execute it with precision. But the ability to truly move an audience, to make them feel something profound, to communicate emotion through music, that is a gift that cannot be taught." He paused again, and the silence in the auditorium was absolute. Music is not a mathematical equation to be solved. It's not a test to be passed with perfect marks. Music is a language of the human experience. It speaks to our joys, our sorrows, our hopes, and our struggles. The best musicians don't just play notes on a page. They tell stories. They share pieces of their soul. Maya felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She wasn't sure where this speech was going, but something about his words resonated deep in her chest. "Today we witnessed many impressive performances," the judge said. "We heard pieces executed with technical mastery that would impress any conservatory in the world. But we also heard something else. We heard a performance that reminded us why we all fell in love with music in the first place." He looked down at his notes, then back up at the audience. "The full scholarship to Riverside Conservatory, including tuition, housing, and a monthly stipend for living expenses, is awarded to Maya Chen." For a second, Maya wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. The words seemed to hang in the air, not quite real, not quite believable. Then the auditorium erupted. The applause was deafening. People were standing, clapping, some even cheering. Maya sat frozen in her seat, her mind racing to catch up with what had just happened. She'd won. She'd actually won. Maya, The young man beside her touched her arm gently. You did it. You won. Maya started, but her voice caught in her throat. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over, running down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of joy, of disbelief. The judge was gesturing for her to come up on stage. With shaking legs, Maya stood. The young man helped guide her toward the stage stairs, where a staff member took over, helping her navigate the steps. When she reached the microphone, the applause was still going. It seemed to last forever, wave after wave of appreciation washing over her. She stood there, overwhelmed, not quite sure what to do or say. Finally, the noise died down enough for her to speak. She cleared her throat, her hands gripping the microphone stand for support. She started, then stopped, collecting her thoughts. I don't really know what to say. This scholarship, this opportunity, it means everything to me. Music has always been the way I see the world. When I lost my sight 5 years ago, I thought I might lose music too. But I learned that I didn't need my eyes to feel the keys beneath my fingers, to hear the harmony between notes, to understand what a piece was trying to say. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. People often ask me how I play without being able to see. The truth is, I think not being able to see has taught me to listen more carefully, to feel more deeply. Every note isn't just a sound to me. It's a texture, an emotion, a color in my mind. Music isn't something I watch myself play. It's something I experience with my whole being. She paused, thinking about Victoria, about all the cruelty she'd endured that day. I want to thank everyone who doubted me, Maya said, her voice calm but firm. Every person who assumed I couldn't do this because of my disability. Every whisper, every look of skepticism, every cruel comment. You all gave me something to prove. You reminded me why I work so hard, why I refuse to give up. Why I'll never let anyone else's limitations become my own. The audience was silent now, hanging on every word. Limitations only exist when we accept them, Maya continued. When we believe what others say about what we can or cannot do. I stopped accepting limitations the day I decided that blindness wouldn't steal my dreams. And I hope that anyone listening who's been told they can't do something, anyone who's been doubted or dismissed or made to feel less than, I hope you remember that other people's opinions don't define what you're capable of achieving. She smiled, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. Thank you to the judges for seeing past my disability and hearing my music. Thank you to my mother, who never let me quit even when I wanted to. And thank you to everyone who supported me on this journey. This scholarship isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who refused to let me give up on myself. The applause that followed was different from before. It wasn't just appreciation for a good performance. It was something deeper, more personal. Maya could hear emotion in people's voices, could sense that her words had touched something real. As she was guided off the stage to accept her official scholarship certificate and paperwork, Maya caught a glimpse of movement in the front row. Victoria had stood up and was walking quickly toward the exit, her friends scrambling to follow. Even without seeing her face, Maya could sense the defeat in her posture, the weight of a humiliation far more profound than any she'd inflicted on Maya earlier. But Maya didn't feel triumphant in a mean way. She didn't feel the need to gloat or rub her victory in Victoria's face. She just felt grateful. Grateful for the opportunity. Grateful for her gift. Grateful that she'd had the courage to show up and compete despite everything. The scholarship papers were pressed into her hands, and people crowded around to congratulate her. Strangers were introducing themselves. Other students were asking questions about her technique, and somewhere in the chaos, Maya heard her mother's voice calling her name. She'd done it. Against all odds, despite all the cruelty and doubt, she'd proven that talent and heart could triumph over arrogance and privilege, and that, Maya thought as she hugged her mother tight, was worth more than any scholarship. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Maya found herself surrounded by well-wishers, other students asking about her technique, faculty members introducing themselves and welcoming her to the conservatory. Her mother stayed close by her side, occasionally whispering descriptions of people approaching, helping Maya navigate the crowd. There's a reporter from the local arts magazine asking if she can interview you, her mother said quietly. And the head of the piano department wants to schedule a meeting about your course load for next semester. Maya's head was spinning. Just this morning, she'd been the girl everyone whispered about, the one Victoria had mocked openly. Now everything had changed. But even as people congratulated her and praised her performance, Maya couldn't shake the memory of Victoria's expression, or rather the feeling of it, as she'd rushed from the auditorium. As the crowd began to thin out, Maya and her mother made their way toward the exit. The conservatory felt different now, less intimidating, more like a place where she actually belonged. They were almost to the main doors when Maya heard a familiar voice behind them. "Wait, please wait." Maya stopped, recognizing the voice immediately. Victoria. Her mother tensed beside her, protective instinct kicking in. "Maya, we don't have to." "It's okay, Mom," Maya said softly. She turned in the direction of Victoria's voice. "Yes?" There was a long pause. Maya could hear Victoria breathing, could sense her friends weren't with her this time. She was alone. Victoria started, then stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was different from before. Smaller, uncertain. "Can we talk? Just for a minute? Privately?" Maya's mother squeezed her arm, a silent question. Maya nodded slightly. "I'll be right over there," her mother said, moving a few steps away but staying close enough to intervene if needed. Another pause. Maya waited, letting Victoria take her time. "I owe you an apology," Victoria finally said. The confidence that had dripped from her voice all day was completely gone. "What I said today in the waiting room and in the cafe, it was cruel. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." Maya stayed quiet, listening. "I've been thinking about it all evening," Victoria continued, her words coming faster now, like she needed to get them out before she lost her nerve, "about why I acted that way. And I think I was scared." "Scared?" Maya asked, genuinely surprised. "Of what?" "Of you," Victoria admitted. "Of what you represent. My whole life. Everything has been handed to me because of my family name. My grandmother was a concert pianist. My father is a conductor. My mother teaches at Juilliard. I've had the best teachers, the best instruments, access to the best opportunities, and still deep down I've always wondered if I was actually talented or just privileged." Maya heard Victoria take a shaky breath. "When I saw you today, this girl who'd lost her sight but still had the courage to audition, still had the dedication to learn incredibly difficult pieces, still had the passion to compete. It terrified me. Because if you could do all of that without the advantages I've had, what did that say about me? About whether I'd earned anything in my life or just coasted on my family's reputation? So you decided to tear me down," Maya said quietly. "It wasn't a question." "Yes," Victoria said, her voice cracking slightly. "Instead of facing my own insecurities, I tried to make you feel small. I tried to convince everyone, including myself, that you didn't belong here, that somehow your disability disqualified you. But the truth is, I was the one who felt like I didn't belong. I was the one who felt like a fraud." Maya stood there processing Victoria's words. Part of her wanted to walk away, to let Victoria stew in her guilt. The things she'd said had been genuinely hurtful. But another part of her, the part that had always tried to see people with compassion, recognized something familiar in Victoria's confession. "Can I tell you something?" Maya asked. "Of course. When I first lost my sight, I was angry at everyone. At the drunk driver who hit our car. At the doctors who couldn't fix my eyes. At God or the universe or whatever force allowed something so unfair to happen. But mostly I was angry at myself. Because I felt like I'd lost the thing that made me special. Piano was supposed to be my future, my identity, my purpose. Without my sight, I thought I was nothing." Victoria was silent, listening. "It took me a long time to realize that my worth wasn't tied to whether I could see or not," Maya continued. "That I was still the same person, with the same passion, the same dedication, the same love for music. My circumstances had changed, but I hadn't. Not really. I just had to learn a new way of being myself." "How did you do it?" Victoria asked softly. "How did you get past the anger?" "I stopped comparing myself to who I used to be," Maya said. "I stopped mourning the pianist I might have become and started embracing the pianist I actually was. And I learned that the obstacles I faced didn't make me weaker. They made me different. Maybe even stronger in some ways." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Your performance today, it wasn't just technically good. It was real. It was honest. When I played, I was just executing notes perfectly. But when you played, you were sharing something true about yourself. That's what the judges responded to. That's what everyone felt. Your technique is incredible," Maya said, meaning it. I was listening from backstage. The precision, the speed, the control, it was remarkable. But technique is just a tool. What matters is what you do with it, what you say with it. I've spent so much time trying to be perfect, Victoria said, and Maya could hear tears in her voice now. Trying to live up to my family's legacy, trying to prove I deserve my last name. But I forgot why I started playing in the first place. I forgot that music is supposed to mean something. Maya felt a surge of unexpected empathy. They were different in so many ways, from completely opposite worlds, but in this moment, she understood Victoria's struggle. It's not too late, Maya said gently. You can still find that meaning again. You can still figure out what you want to say with your music. I don't know if I can, Victoria whispered. Yes, you can, Maya said firmly. But you have to stop hiding behind perfection. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to let people see the real you through your playing. That's scary, I know, but it's the only way to create something that actually matters. There was a long silence. Then Maya heard Victoria step closer. Thank you, Victoria said quietly, for accepting my apology, for being kind when you had every right to tell me to go away, for teaching me something important today. Maya smiled slightly. We all have things to learn. We all have our own struggles. The difference is whether we let those struggles make us bitter or help us grow. I want to do better, Victoria said, and she sounded like she meant it. I want to be better, not just as a pianist, but as a person. Then you will be, Maya said simply. They stood there for another moment, an unlikely understanding forming between them. Then Victoria said goodbye and walked away, her footsteps slower and more thoughtful than they'd been all day. Maya's mother returned to her side. Everything okay? Yeah, Maya said, feeling lighter somehow. Everything's okay. As they walked out of the conservatory and into the cool evening air, Maya thought about everything that had happened. The cruelty, the doubt, the performance, the victory, and finally the reconciliation. It had been one of the longest, most emotionally exhausting days of her life. But it had also been one of the most important. She'd proven to herself and everyone else that she belonged here, that her disability didn't define her limitations. She'd stood up to someone who tried to break her spirit and came out stronger. And maybe, just maybe, she'd help someone else start their own journey of growth. I'm proud of you, her mother said as they reached the car. Not just for winning the scholarship, for everything, for your grace, your strength, your kindness even to people who don't deserve it. Thanks, Mom, Maya said, hugging her tight. As they drove home through the darkening streets, Maya sat in the passenger seat with her scholarship certificate in her lap, thinking about the future. Starting at Riverside Conservatory in the fall, meeting new teachers and fellow students, learning new pieces and refining her technique, continuing to prove that blindness was just one aspect of who she was, not the defining feature. She thought about Victoria too, hoping that today had been a turning point for both of them. Sometimes the hardest lessons came from the most painful experiences. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up teaching us the most important things about ourselves. And sometimes, Maya thought with a small smile, the obstacles in our path aren't really obstacles at all. They're just opportunities to show the world and ourselves what we're truly capable of becoming. The car turned onto their street, and Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts, new mountains to climb. But tonight, she could rest in the knowledge that she'd faced her fears and won. Not just the scholarship, but something far more valuable. She'd won the right to define herself on her own terms, and nobody could ever take that away from her. The spotlight she'd stolen wasn't just a moment of glory. It was a statement, a declaration, a promise to herself and everyone watching. She was Maya Chen. She was blind. She was a pianist. She was a scholarship winner. She was strong. She was kind. She was capable, and she was just getting started.